Was I wrong for putting my own parents in a position where they faced financial ruin, essentially forcing a judge to ask them a question that publicly stripped away their entire defense, all because they had tried to utterly destroy my life first? Tell me honestly if you would have done the same thing, because as wild as this story is, the core of it is simple: a desperate need for justice against the people who should have loved me most. I'm talking about my parents, Mark and Susan, and I promise you, by the time you hear the full, agonizing truth, you'll understand why I had to do what I did, even if it cost me the last shred of my family. It all started 7 years ago, the day I finally sold my first company. It wasn't some massive tech giant, but it was a solid, successful software firm that I'd built from my college dorm room. The acquisition closed for a clean $5 million. For a kid who'd been living on instant noodles and pure caffeine for 5 years, it was a staggering amount. I called my parents immediately, my heart pounding with excitement, picturing the pride in their voices. Instead, the first thing my mother, Susan, said was, "Well, it's about time. We always knew you had this potential, but you were just so slow to realize it." That moment, that casual dismissal of years of blood, sweat, and panic attacks, should have been the first glaring warning sign. My father, Mark, an accountant with a deeply ingrained sense of entitlement, chimed in, "Now you can finally pay us back for all those private school tuitions we sacrificed for, and maybe get a proper house, not that student hovel you've been living in." There was no congratulations. There was only obligation. For years I had believed their narrative. They were the struggling, selfless parents who had sacrificed everything for my future. I remember them constantly reminding me how they had to forego a new car or a big vacation because my private school education was the priority. But once I had money, their sacrifice suddenly felt less like love and more like a long-term, high-interest loan they were finally ready to call in. I was generous to a fault. I bought them a new high-end SUV, paid off their remaining mortgage, and put a significant sum into a retirement fund for them, about $1 million in total. I thought I was buying peace, securing their love and approval. For a while it worked. They introduced me proudly as our successful son, the millionaire, and things were relatively calm. The real trouble began 2 years later when I started my second, much more ambitious company. This time, it was a platform targeting a massive gap in the logistics market. It required significant initial investment. I poured almost all the remaining money from the first sale, plus a substantial bank loan, into it. I was burning through cash, but I was also on the verge of a breakthrough that could make the first sale look like pocket change. My parents, however, didn't see a passionate entrepreneur building a new future. They saw an unsecured asset about to slip through their fingers. They started showing up at my apartment unannounced, checking in on my finances. My mother would quiz me about my burn rate, and my father started subtly pressuring me to sell my personal investments and put the cash in a safe, predictable account. I told them repeatedly that this was the life of a startup, high risk, high reward, and that I was confident in my business model. They just couldn't grasp the concept of delayed gratification. They saw their supposed inheritance dwindling, and they panicked. The stress of building a multi-million-dollar company while simultaneously fending off my own parents became unbearable. I finally had to tell them firmly that my business and my finances were off limits for discussion. That's when they went nuclear. They stopped talking to me for 3 months, which was actually a relief. But then I received the certified letter. It was from a law firm, a very expensive, very aggressive one. My parents were suing me. They weren't just asking for the remaining money I had from the first sale. They were claiming that every single penny I had ever earned, the $5 million, the value of the new company, even the interest I had accrued, was theirs. Their claim was utterly insane. They asserted that the $1 million I had given them was merely a partial repayment for the emotional and financial damages. they sustained while raising and educating me. They were using a highly convoluted, pseudo-legal theory based on the idea that they had invested in my future, and were now entitled to the full return on that investment, citing my high school tuition and the cost of feeding me as a child as part of their capital contribution. The underlying goal was obvious. They wanted to freeze all my assets, bankrupt the new company, and force a liquidation to pay them off. They wanted to take every single thing I had worked for and leave me with nothing. The timing couldn't have been worse. I was 3 weeks away from a major funding round that would have solidified the company's future. The lawsuit instantly triggered clauses in my loan agreements and spooked my potential investors, who put the deal on hold. My entire world was collapsing, and it was engineered by my own mother and father. The worst part was realizing the depth of their betrayal. They didn't just want my money, they wanted to destroy my life if they couldn't control it. They hired a high-profile lawyer who was known for aggressive litigation, and who seemed to relish the idea of bankrupting a young tech founder in a courtroom circus. I scrambled to find a competent lawyer myself, pouring what little spare capital I had into defending myself against my own blood. The pre-trial negotiations were a farce. Their lawyer made it clear, settle for $4 million or we will drag you through the mud, publicly ruin your reputation, and ensure your new company dies a painful death. My lawyer, a sharp, empathetic woman named Sarah, advised me that while their case was legally flimsy, the mere existence of a major lawsuit could bleed me dry through legal fees and destroy my business before the judge even saw the evidence. That's when Sarah and I started working on a strategy that was less about defense and more about a surgical counterattack. A strategy that targeted the very source of my parents' perceived strength, their own financial stability and ego. So that's the situation I was in, on the verge of losing everything I had built, not to a market collapse or a business rival, but to the people who were supposed to be my safe harbor. My parents were not just suing me, they were trying to steal my future and rewrite the past. Before I tell you what happened next in that final, devastating courtroom showdown, I want you to pause right now and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have settled just to save your business, or would you have fought back, knowing that the only way to win was to expose and hurt the people who had hurt you most? Take a moment and let me know. The discovery phase of the lawsuit was brutal. My parents had to submit their own financial records, which was precisely what Sarah had been waiting for. It turned out that the sacrifices they had made to send me to private school were not nearly as catastrophic as they had always claimed. They had maintained 2 separate retirement accounts, one of which was an undisclosed, fully funded account that was currently valued at almost $2 million. Money they had saved while constantly complaining about being broke, the new SUV and the mortgage payoff I gave them. That money had been almost immediately transferred to a series of high-risk offshore investments, a move Mark had tried to conceal. They were gambling with the peace I had bought for them, and they were hiding money from me and, crucially, from their own bank. Sarah's genius move was twofold. First, we filed a countersuit for the immediate return of the original $1 million gift, arguing it was a fraudulent conveyance because they had accepted the money while simultaneously planning to sue me for the full amount. This put their immediate liquidity into question. Second, and this was the truly cutting blow, Sarah had found a tiny, overlooked legal precedent concerning the transfer of assets during an anticipated or pending legal action. We filed an emergency motion demanding that, based on their admitted intent to bankrupt me and their own attempts to hide assets and fabricate a claim of financial ruin, my parents be required to post a $3 million bond as a guarantee against my potential counter, damages should they lose the case. The move was unprecedented for a family dispute, designed to force their hand and expose their greed. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who looked utterly weary of my parents' posturing, granted a hearing for the bond motion. The courtroom was packed. My parents looked smug, confident in their expensive lawyer, who launched into a furious tirade, calling our motion an abusive, vengeful, and baseless tactic designed to intimidate his financially strapped clients. He painted a pathetic picture of them, the selfless, aging parents who had been slighted by their ungrateful millionaire son. My father, Mark, even dabbed his eyes dramatically. Then Sarah stood up. She didn't shout. She just presented the facts clearly and coldly. She presented the evidence of the $2 million hidden retirement fund, and the offshore transfers immediately following the purchase of the SUV and mortgage payoff I had given them. She showed the court documents where my parents' lawyer had explicitly stated their intent was to bankrupt me. She concluded, Your Honor, the plaintiffs are not financially strapped. They are financially predatory. They came into this court to liquidate my client's future and leave him with nothing. Their own financials prove they have access to liquid assets they have desperately tried to conceal. If they are truly prepared to take everything from my client, they must be equally prepared to face consequences should their baseless claim fail. The bond is simply a necessary protection against their malice. The judge looked down at my parents, who had now turned ashen. Her gaze was steady and piercing. She ignored their lawyer's panicked objections and simply picked up a document. My mother's affidavit of financial hardship. She looked directly at Mark and Susan, and in a voice that was quiet but carried absolute authority, she asked the one question that shattered their entire defense, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, if the claim you are pursuing against your son is one of rightful and necessary financial return, why did you feel the need to hide $2 million in assets you earned during the time he was supporting you? The silence in the courtroom was deafening. It wasn't a legal question, it was a moral one, stripped bare for everyone to see. Their lawyer sputtered about privacy and irrelevant information, but the damage was done. My father stammered we were saving for a better future. And my mother just stared at the floor, unable to meet the judge's eyes. The judge didn't need any more evidence. She ruled immediately, and it was a stunning blow. She not only denied their motion to freeze my assets but she granted our motion for a punitive bond ordering them to place $2. $5 million into escrow within 30 days. They didn't have $2. $5 million in cash. They had to liquidate their hidden retirement fund and sell the house I had helped them pay off. They dropped the lawsuit 3 days later, unable to meet the bond requirement, and unable to face the public exposure of their utter duplicity. The aftermath was exactly what they had tried to inflict on me. They were financially embarrassed, forced to downsize drastically, and publicly exposed as the greedy, manipulative figures they had truly become. My new company secured the funding round a week later, stronger than ever, because the legal threat was gone. My parents, I haven't spoken to them since. They sent a letter through their lawyer, not an apology, but a lament about how I had ruined their golden years. I simply forwarded it to Sarah and told her to file it in the trash. I had won the battle, but I had lost a family that never really existed in the first place. I walked away with my company, my dignity, and the painful knowledge that the people you trust the most can become your greatest enemies. This experience wasn't just about money. It was about the sickening realization that a parent's love can be conditional, transactional, and ultimately weaponized. It taught me the cruelest lesson of all. Sometimes the only way to save yourself is to fight back with every ounce of legal and moral force you have, even if the enemy is your own blood. Like this video if you were on my side and believe I was right to protect myself against their devastating betrayal. Subscribe for more stories like this one, where justice prevails against the odds. And please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Did the judge make the right call? I'll see you all in the next story.